I can hear something calling. It's calling me every day. If taking a chance is a crime, then I've got hell to pay. I've been walking the streets in my mind, trying to find a new day. Keep on searching until I will find, until I find a new way. I'm gonna say something, I hope you don't mind. It's time to rearrange. I walk round in circles, I'm going nowhere. It's time to make a change.
As John Maxwell once famously said, people buy into the leader before they buy into the vision. This is a timeless truth that perfectly reflects today's guest, Neil Jurd OBE. Neil is the author of the leadership book, a former British Army officer, and a Sandhurst instructor. He has dedicated his career to purpose-driven leadership, combining experiential learning with innovative tools like his platform, LeaderConnect, to transform how leaders inspire and empower their teams. Neil, it's such an honor to have you back on the show. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Charles, thank you. And thank you so much for having me back. It's great to see you again.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this. Now that I'm going on year 4, I have to start to look back now and see some of the fantastic people I was so fortunate to have on, like yourself, and see if we can do an episode 2. And so far, everyone that I've asked has been gracious enough to say yes. So I guess I didn't offend or do too much wrong the first time around. So I'm really happy about that.
Yeah.
So Neil, I wanted to have you on for a second episode. I mean, it's obvious to me you're somebody who I look to as a leader in leadership. And I think now with the changing world, it's even more important than ever. And you've been doing some really cool things, I think, since the last time we talked. And I think it'll be really, really good to get into it. So I wanted to start with, in your leadership book, you talk about, even emphasize the power of purpose. How can leaders clearly define and communicate their purpose to inspire their teams and align everyone towards a common goal?
Well, they need to think first. And you find a lot of organizations are mindless, like literally mindless, because nobody's doing the thinking. So organizations kind of rumble on and people do the sort of thing they've always been doing, but it's not focused. There's no kind of sense of direction or energy. And obviously, the more focused an organization is, the more focused people are on a purpose, the more force, the more power will be going towards achieving what it is you're trying to achieve. So the first thing is the leaders have to do the thinking. And leaders are busy. Leaders bounce from meeting to meeting. Everyone thinks it's good to look busy. And actually, you need to step back and you need to take time and you need to define your purpose. And then you need to share it. You need to tell people what the purpose is, because it has to be simple as well. People overcomplicate issues. If you can summarize your purpose in 1 or 2 lines, people will remember it. If you put it on a page of A4, or even worse, a long document, nobody will read it. It will have no effect. That's why successful politicians, go for these very snappy slogans that focus people. And the second thing is you have to share it. You have to share that purpose. You talk about it all the time. You make sure that everybody knows it, because however good your purpose is, if people don't know it, they can't possibly do it. And if people don't understand the purpose or don't know the purpose, any activity is pretty much random. And that you're not going to win with random.
You mentioned the word focus, and I start to think about, when you say focus, and for bigger organizations, for example, focus in a way that gets hyper specific about the organization and what they're trying to achieve, or more focused on, can focus be more vague as it comes down to the individual teams? Because do you feel like sometimes the individual teams, their focus or their motivation may be different than the organizations?
Yes, absolutely. So I think you will have different aims and focuses at different levels, but the overall focus should encompass everybody, and every subordinate focus, every smaller team's focus must contribute to the higher focus. And any activity which can't be proven to be contributing to what the boss is trying to achieve, what the organization is trying to achieve, is irrelevant activity. So yes, you would define different things. What people will be focusing on in the warehouse or on the sales floor will be a subtly different statement, or possibly a completely different statement to the higher purpose, but it will contribute. It must contribute. There's an exercise in the book that I define, which is, the way I do this with clients is we set big targets out on the floor, and then we measure what people are focusing on by, or what projects they're working on, by impact multiplied by relevance. And it's a really good way of checking that the work people are doing is impactful and is contributing to, so relevance is how much it contributes to the defined purpose. It's really obvious, but you'd be amazed whenever we work this exercise, whenever we try it. It is amazing how transformational obvious things often are. Even what you said today, that purpose is so important. Well, of course it is, but in theory, everyone would know that. But the reality is, it doesn't happen. You know, a lot of people are, a lot of organizations are drifting.
Yeah, and I think I wanted to ask you that because I think this is a great time of year for a lot of people to hear this podcast, because of it's right around when people are starting to set goals for this upcoming year. And I think as leaders, we sometimes fail early by screwing up that goal setting part, because it's, I mean, it's pretty obvious sometimes, like contribute to the revenue growth in 2025. Oh, that to me is, yes, that's almost an obvious thing, but it's, to your point, how do we focus in and start to set expectation and drivers as to what that really does mean? So I think that's really good what you're saying there. And Neil, do you see, when it comes to focus, I have somebody had said this to me years ago, and this has stuck with me for my career, that as leaders, trust is our currency. And I feel like in order to focus a team, they really have to trust you, because if they feel that they're trying to help you achieve for your benefit as a leader, they start to tune out really quick. So, what advice would you share with leaders about building that trust within their teams?
It's got to be authentic. If you're building trust because you read somewhere that you should build trust, then people will see through that. They trust you based on, I suppose, your reputation. People may or may not believe. You can fool someone in the first meeting. You can be good at the firm handshake and the looking people in the eye. But your reputation comes from people who've worked for you for a while. If you've said things are going to get better, did they get better? And the little things like looking after people, which, going back to my army background, was something that we were absolutely taught as trainee officers, is you look after your soldiers. You care deeply for your soldiers. You learn everything about them. You know, you know that you know who they're married to, you know how many kids they've got, you know what football team they support. You know what size boots they wear and stuff like that. You literally study them and know them really well, and then you use that information to look after them. And that isn't the same as being soft on them. You set high standards, and you expect high standards, but they know that you've got their back. The motto of the Royal Military Academy at Sandhurst is serve to lead, and that's so important. Leadership is an act of service. You are serving in the army, but you're serving. You're not. It's not an act. It's not a position of privilege. If anything, you've got the hardest job in the team, really. But you are in the team, not above the team, and I think that's really important.
Neil, I think too, for me, what I've been experiencing and seeing, and I really wanted to touch on this with you when it comes to trust. I'm seeing more and more that trust it's layered throughout the organizations, where you may be able to have a team trust their immediate leader, but then as it passes over the immediate leader, distrust starts to seep in as it goes above that leader. How can we as leaders guard against that happening? Because sometimes it's hard to control. And then do we as leaders risk ruining our trust because we're trying to build trust between the people we lead and the people above, or the organization above?
I know exactly what you mean. And I know the language of that. And the language of that is where at one layer, they're talking about them being the people higher up. And they call it things like the puzzle palace, or they've got disparaging terms for the senior leadership. And then it goes the other way, where the senior leadership become mistrustful of what's actually going on. Hold on, we told them this. Why are they not doing it? And you end up with misunderstanding. As with everything, personal connection is the best way, and it depends on the size of the organization, but the bosses who get round everywhere are legendary. We work with a major pharmaceutical, and the boss there is loved. And these people, they've got places in Boston, they've got places in France, places in the UK. They're all over. The boss turns up everywhere. Everyone feels they know this guy. It's like a lesson in how to build connection. It doesn't mean that the organization's perfect, but there is the trust there. When he says something, at the very least, people think, yeah, he's on our side. He gets it. He means it. You have to be willing to get in the car, or in his case, get in the helicopter. But you have to be willing to go places, whether it's walking to the other end of your site and seeing people 500 meters away, or 500 miles away, or 5,000 miles away. You've got to build personal connection in person. But if you can't, if the organization is so vast that that's not practical, and clearly it's not practical in an organization, this particular one's got 100,000 people in it, there's other stuff you need to do as well. You need to speak to large groups of people. You need to attend stuff. You need to make clever use of the internet and media. But you build trust. It's a very personal thing. You build trust personally. You can't expect trust based on your rank, your grade, or your status. You might get an instant flash of, that's the boss, I'll give them a chance, but that wears thin, as you'll have seen. That wears thin really quickly. So yeah, I think it's about that. I think it's about getting around people.
Yeah, I think what I'll take away from what you just said there is, and it makes me happy at least, because when you say you build trust personally, I feel like that's been at least how I've been trying to do it. And I've been fortunate because the organizations I lead aren't that big, and I have a better opportunity to get more personal and be more personal. So I think that's really important, but I think that's great advice for those who are leading larger organizations, to hear that.
What I used to do, so I led a Gurkha unit. So Gurkhas are soldiers from Nepal who serve in the British Army, and they are highly talented soldiers, highly talented. The selection process there is incredibly tough. Something like 1 in 2,000 get through from initial application to actually serving. So these people are really high quality. But I found getting to know people, I would go for walks with people. So when new soldiers were posted to our unit, rather than have them in the office and sit down and have a probably rather uncomfortable status conversation, we would just go for a walk, and we would talk. Often there was a route that I did around our barracks, and I would sometimes go round again and again and again, and we'd sometimes be walking for an hour or an hour and a half. But that's what I mean about building trust in person. And then when we were in Iraq, I used to do a thing where I had breakfast with 4 or 5 of my youngest soldiers, generally, sometimes with a junior leader like a corporal or lance corporal, which is like a shift manager, I suppose. And we would meet at 6:30 or 7, and we would chat. But the interesting thing was, I'd be learning Nepali at the time. I'd be learning the language, so they were correcting me on my grammar and my pronunciation of my words. And it worked really well for me anyway. But I think for them, that we got to know each other outside of the normal, what's expected. I've always thought doing the unexpected, doing things a bit differently, can work really well.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, because I even noticed for me, I feel like now, because everything's way more virtual, I think, than it was in the past, but I try to just keep what I call an open phone policy. Like, you have my cell, you have my Teams, like, and I don't care. Just call me for whatever. I don't care what it is. And I do find that people will take you up on that, and it's a good thing. Neil, do you think as leaders, corporations, I feel like just people in general, I know my parents, grandparents, I would hear them say, if money got tight, usually the first things that would start to suffer is your own health. For example, you would eat cheaper foods, you would, buy hot dogs or ramen to, save money. Do you think sometimes as organizations, leadership is kind of the fat per se that they think they can cut out as they worry about other things?
Yeah, I think there's probably 2 angles to that. So there's leadership in terms of leadership training. So when money's tight, people will often cut leadership development, any training that feels discretionary, marketing. And I totally understand why people make these cuts. But of course, if you can afford to keep those functions going, you will be better placed to come out of whatever dip you're in. The second thing, and this might be more what you meant, is people, even if they've been taught how to lead, and I think that, so my take, as you probably remember from our last chat, is leadership is simple. It's really simple. It's about increasing your impact, connecting with people, focusing on a clear and compelling purpose. And it is that easy, and it's that easy to understand. And if you make an effort, if you can control your instincts to blame, to lash out, to whatever it is you do under pressure, if you can control that and behave well, anyone can lead pretty effectively. The problem is, under pressure, people don't. Under pressure, people kind of snap back into often their most defensive behavior. I've had a bad day, so now you're going to have some of my bad day. I'm going to take it out on you. The boss has spoken to me about money. I'm now going to overreact, and I need to see, every authorization over $5 needs to come through me. And you can find leadership gets replaced with really hard management, and people often confuse the two terms. They're interchangeable, but they're not. You lead people, you manage stuff, but under pressure, leadership gets forgotten, management takes over, and swiping defensive moves like, right, we'll sack everyone there, we'll close that site, we won't spend anything on this for the next 2 years. You start making knee-jerk reactions, which I think often come out of not planning the year before or the year before that as well. If you I talked about mindlessness. If you take time to think, you can often see what's coming. And there's again, a lot of my thinking is inspired by military planning. and at staff college and Sandhurst before that, we were taught when you're making a plan, you ask yourself the question, what's most likely to happen, but then what's the worst that could happen, and you work out your answer to both of those. So organizations that get caught out, they weren't thinking about what the worst that could happen was, or they didn't make a plan.
Yeah, and I think it's unfortunate, but I think we see more and more of that. And I think it's because I think a lot of it's due to knee-jerk reactions. And, and listen, I don't envy some of these people that make these decisions, because I think at the end of the day, they're under extreme pressure nowadays. And I think it's something we talked about, or I might have seen it in your book or your TED Talk, but I think it's a lot to do with, take that step back first and kind of evaluate and pause. I think you called it the pause, something about pause. Was that what it was?
TED Talk? Yeah, the TED Talk. I talk about the subtitle of the TED Talk is pause and allow. And pause is exactly what you're saying. You just, however urgent things feel, there is usually more time than you think. Or if you think there's a lot of time, there's often less time than you think. But when you think, I have to decide right now, probably don't. You're probably being swayed by your perception of the expectations of others. I need to get them off my back. I need to look decisive. And a very good boss I worked for, actually the best boss I ever worked for, I worked for when I left the army. It's an organization called British Sugar. I was head of logistics there. But I had actually worked for him many years before in the army. But at British Sugar, he described the when people are under pressure. He coined this phrase, which I've never heard from anyone else, of all problems looking the same size. And I think that happens when you feel under pressure. You can't prioritize. Everything's huge. The have you got enough money to pay your staff can look exactly the same size as the new shelf or the broken shelf in warehouse 6 or whatever. But of course they're not. So that's why you need to pause and think. Sometimes it's for minutes. I've had situations that I've been in where everybody who isn't responsible will have an opinion. And often the less responsible that they are, the less responsibility they're carrying, the more they need to be heard. And sometimes you just have to stop everyone. And I've had times when I've just said, stop, just nobody talk for 5 minutes. Just scribble some stuff down, work out what you think, then we'll talk. It takes that pressure out. But pause can also be an offsite. Pause could be going away for a week, but whatever it is, a pause clears your head. And then allow is about trusting, going back to your point at the beginning of this chat, trusting other people to think, to make decisions, to act, and to carry out that action. And what I said in my TED Talk is that has you in fewer loops, and your aim as a leader is to be in fewer loops, because leaders who say keep me in the loop. Did you ever, there were some characters called the Mr. Men over here. Did you ever have the Mr. Men books in America? Did you have those?
It rings a bell, but I'm not super familiar with them.
They're children's books. They're rivals to your children's books, but they've been going for like 40 or 50 years. But there was a character called Mr. Messy, which is just a scribble with eyes on it. And a lot of leaders, I think, are in so many loops that they're like Mr. Messy, just scribbled loops all over the place. And it makes it impossible to get anything done. You're keeping an eye on this, and people are phoning you, and you're getting your 100 emails a day. And actually you become fixed by all of this excessive stimulation that somehow supposes that you as the leader are this genius at the middle who controls everything, like Voldemort, or sorry, I shouldn't say Voldemort, should I? But controls everything like some evil genius. It's nonsense. You give people the clear and compelling purpose, select the right people, train the right people, then be brave enough to get out of the way. And sorry, you've got me on one here, Charles, so I'll stop because I probably
That
say
that
too much.
that is okay. No, I really, really appreciate it. And I definitely want to get into speaking about some of the experiential training and LeaderConnect. I think that will be definitely a great way to start to close this out. So, Neil, I feel like your leadership approach is rooted in experiential learning. And I'll be honest, I don't really think I've ever heard it called it that so much, but it makes sense. So why do you believe that the hands-on experience is more effective than, say, traditional methods?
I don't think traditional methods work. I think so. So I think by traditional methods, what you probably mean, which is the sort of course I've inherited these courses actually in other things that I've done and changed them because they horrified me. So traditionally, you teach people stuff so they understand it intellectually. So you show them 90 slides on the history of leadership development, or you it's always 90 slides. 90 slides seem to fit in a horrific hour, but to be honest, any number of slides, you're giving people the information, but you're not helping them use it. So what you get is, and I'm sure lots of people who are listening have worked for this sort of person. You've got somebody who's got the certificate on the wall that says they can lead. They've got the MBA or whatever, or the masters in leadership, but good heavens, you don't want to work for them. And that's what traditional leadership training does. It gives you someone who knows all the theory with no idea how to apply it. And when organizations mandate leadership training, the easiest way to do it is to create some sort of an online course where you ask people really simple questions. Is leadership about people or stuff? Tick people, and you can therefore prove that they know it's about people. And if you've got to show that you've taught people leadership, well, you've ticked that box, but you have only ticked the box. Those people will not be in any way better leaders because they wasted an hour, usually of their lunch break, going through that sort of learning. It just doesn't work. Now, having said which, I'll caveat that because we have a video learning platform, and for different reasons that does work. And that works because we actually explain it to you and then make you think about it. So the videos explain it. And I go with the principle of one simple piece of theory in each video. So you don't overload people. You show them one thing, then you explore that thing. And that can work quite well. What works really well is experiential. And experiential is, so we base our courses around very simple theory. So in an 8 days worth of training spread out over a year, we will only show people about 12 bits of theory, simple models or simple statements that they'll absorb, they'll think about, they'll discuss, then they'll go and do something. And by something, it will be a cleverly designed project exercise where the more complicated ones, we have hierarchy, we have financial constraints, we have equipment constraints, time constraints, all of the factors you get in real life. And even though it's only a project, it isn't. People will behave in those situations. They will behave how they behave at work. If they feel the stress at work, they'll be feeling the stress on the project. If that stress manifests itself by shouting, they'll shout. If they're really good with people, if they embrace people, if they look after people, that will come across in the project. People will be true to type, and that's what we work with, and we get them to work with. We don't tell them that they're a good leader or a bad leader. All of that comes from self-reflection and discussion. We do create a really trusting group. So we make sure that the dynamics in the group are really good. So then when, if we're doing a project and I snap and it has a negative effect, because it does, if you snap at people, they'll generally withdraw and you'll get less from those people. Even the discussion afterwards, we've got a great atmosphere. People can say, look, Neil, that was this thing you did was really good, but you know the bit where you lost your temper? Well, I noticed when you did that, John just switched off for the rest of the project. And then we talked to John, and John would go, yeah, actually, I was really, really annoyed with that. You shouldn't have spoken to me like that. Much better to get that sort of thing out of the way in a nice country house hotel somewhere with a group of people who are all helping each other to grow, than to be doing it at work where people are scared of your rank and status. They'll never tell you you do it. So you get this illusion that you're the, you know, you've got your best boss mug on the table or your best boss hat, but you know, you're living like the office, like the boss in the office. It's a nonsense. So that's how experiential works. Simple theory, often quite extravagant projects. They can go on for a day, or close to a day, or overnight, and it works beautifully. And then we back our courses up with coaching. So between the times, we'll see people 4 times a year. Our courses are accredited by the Institute of Leadership, and we'll also put in psychometrics on a lot of the courses, so people understand how they see themselves. And then we work with them quite closely to help them apply the learning of the course, because the other thing you get with a PowerPoint course, all the theory, you don't apply it. Well, I think that's pointless. So we make sure that the theory we do give, people actually use it, and it works really well.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like, as you were saying it, I was envisioning myself going like, yeah, that's how I would learn best. And I think that's a great, and for me in my head, it's how will I learn? And I think that's how a lot of people are. How will you learn? But I think that is a really, really good way to do it. I definitely want to talk a little more about LeaderConnect. Before we jump to that, though, I did want to ask you this, because as you were going through that, do you think sometimes I think in general, people all want to be leaders, but not for the right reasons. I think a lot of people want to lead because being a leader usually equates to more financial stability, more money at their organization. But that's kind of all they're really there for. Do you think there needs to be more of a prerequisite almost? Is there a way to kind of figure out from an organization perspective, do you kind of know who really should kind of move on to further leadership training as opposed to just kind of taking anybody or casting that wide net? Because I feel like organizations will waste so much money on that training, and maybe it could have been kind of figured out sooner.
Yeah, I think often the people that you least want to lead are the ones that most want to lead. And you're right, it's the status that goes with leadership and the pay, and the fact in many organizations advancement can only come from leadership. Once you've reached the top of whatever your trade is within the organization, the only way you're going to go higher is to probably to leave that specialization. I think it's hard to avoid. It's human nature to want to make money in most cases, and that's because we have people that we love and that we look after. We have a lot of us are making money for families, so I can understand that driver. But gosh, you've really got to suppress it, because you need to look after other people. If you are only in it for your own money and promotion, you're not trustworthy at all. That suggests that everything has to be pushed out the way in pursuit of your own success, and that's, you see leaders like that, and it's awful. But I think it would be too idealistic to say that, although of course in some charities and some social movements this could be the case, but for people to do it entirely without an eye on anything for them, I think that's incredibly difficult. Even where people aren't being paid, there's often a link to status or position. But the bigger that link is, the less effective in my opinion, the less effective they will be as a true leader, a leader who looks after people, cares for people, has got everyone's best interests at heart, and achieves the objective. It's a really hard combination.
That being said, I think that's where applications like LeaderConnect come in, because I hate to say this in this way, but I think it's true. I think that there's more people in that bucket that we just spoke about. And I don't think I don't think the motives is selfish, right? I think it is because we want to take care of our families and we want to do what's right by people we care about. But I think this is why something that you offer in LeaderConnect is really good, because that may be your reason for getting into it. But I think there's opportunities with things like your book, LeaderConnect, other online courses where maybe that's how you start, but it doesn't mean how you can finish. Because I think if you don't look to better yourself, educate yourself, get training, you're going to be back to not leading and not have that money and that status you wanted. So LeaderConnect, I think it's really innovative tool, Neil. And I think it will help people with leadership growth. So I wanted to give you an opportunity now to talk about how does that platform complement some of the traditional leadership training, and what's some of the unique benefits that you would call out that would make people want to check it out?
Well, anyone who does one of our physical courses, any company who put a cohort through one of our physical courses, each member also gets LeaderConnect access, which is very good for revising some of the stuff we've covered, or looking ahead or looking elsewhere. Now, LeaderConnect has grown a lot in the last few months. So we've now got, I suppose, thousands of episodes of different leadership related podcasts on. We've also got a wide range of speakers on there, sometimes with just one video, quite a lot of American content, actually, as you probably realized. And then we've also got courses on, so certified courses. You can do an 18 module, 17 or 18 module course of mine, where you watch a 6 or 7 minute video, answer a few questions, and then at some stage move on to the next video, and you get a certificate at the end of that. We've got about 14 courses like that on there. So it's a really good, simple, and very affordable way of people getting that knowledge. If you've read my book, there are courses on there that have a lot of the same content. Actually, the two go very well together. My leadership courses, of which there's a short one, a long one. I've got a teamwork course on there, a strategy and planning course on there. There's also courses in public speaking, and I've got a whole range of interesting people, experts who present this content. So the idea is it suits anyone. A company can put all their managers on, all of their leaders on, or a group of new starters on, or people can buy it for themselves. It's only £97 a person, which is what, $120 or something equates to. And we've also just partnered with an American organization called the Pineapple Academy, who initially specialized in hospitality training, and they're larger than us, and a lot of my content now is on there. Actually, they've just launched it last week. Might be easier for an American audience to look. My book seems to be for sale through Walmart as well somehow. I have no idea how, but otherwise the Sandhurst Trust send it all over the world, and it's on Amazon as well.
Yeah, and the reason I brought that up was because I think that in my experience, and at least what I see, I think organizations get really tied to a culture and a way of doing things. And I bring that up to you because my thought was, I almost feel like something like you're offering from an organization perspective would be a good way to outsource a different perspective as that almost prerequisite to kind of start to weed out and help where maybe that wide net isn't as wide. And the people that are now being trained through the organizational training for leadership could ultimately be now people that have had at least almost like, you know, how over here in the States with college, my daughter's going through this now. There's, you know, she's doing radiology training, right? There's prerequisites that she needs to take first, right? I almost think like what you're offering in a way could be a huge benefit to corporations as that prerequisite, and for people in general who are interested in leadership to start to take this on themselves. Like maybe organizations could offer, you know, if you do this, we'll cover half the cost, we'll do whatever, right? But I feel like as organizations, we miss out on not getting other perspective per se, right? And I think that really hinders us in the long run. So do you only work with corporations, or I want people to understand this, can people just look you up and join for themselves?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, we a really diverse range of people are on it. So the National Health Service were the first people to sign up to it. Not the whole National Health Service, but a group in our area they put 100 people on, like before we'd even built the platform. We've got, like I say, people from pharmaceuticals on it. We've got investment companies, but also universities, some school leadership teams, and then a lot of individuals. So anyone can sign up. And I think what you say is right. I mean, one of the ways that some organizations use it is they say, look, watch this video. We'll meet up in a month and talk about how that applies to us. But you could say, before you come to the interview, we want you to have done the leadership course, and we're going to talk about how you see leadership. So yeah, it would be very good preparation.
Yeah, because I think there's a big thing now, and we're experiencing a lot right now, even myself, in different ways of thinking about being efficient. I sometimes think we don't look to be efficient with our people development. We really we throw this one size fits all type of leadership training or training in general at somebody. It kind of pigeonholes, and I just think there's more out there that organizations could allow for people to start to kind of, you know, maybe they're not jumping right in the deep end, so to speak. They're starting to see what it's like. And I think it would be a big, big benefit. And that leads me to this next thing. How I know with the military, they talk a lot about when they develop soldiers, they put a lot of money investment into soldiers. I think companies are doing that with leadership. So I don't think companies think about the sustainability of their leaders. What strategies do you recommend, Neil, for organizations and for leaders to maintain, you know, probably just even their own well-being in order to sustain the leadership, because it does come with a lot of pressure?
A lot of it's cultural. You said something there that hasn't been my experience, though, about organizations are focusing on leadership development. Whenever we've run a course, almost everybody on the course has had no leadership training. What they have often had is management training. So they understand how to fill in an absence report, and they understand how to start disciplinary action against someone, and they understand how the accountancy system works. So they are expert in the management of their function. But it's very rare, certainly in Britain, leadership is not really understood, and the people who should be commissioning it don't understand it. So usually this is given to somebody in HR who has had no leadership experience themselves. They might be an HR business partner. It could even be the HR director. But other than their own function within the organization, they usually know nothing about leadership themselves. So they are buying a service, contracting a service that they don't understand. So the service they're most likely to contract is the one that requires you to tick 500 boxes and say you've learned leadership. But it's the wrong people usually buying a service that they don't understand. And I think that's a real problem. And in fact, our most successful courses have been where our point of contact, the person who's pulled us in, wasn't the learning and development director or the HR director. It was someone else who wanted a change in their part of the organization or in the whole organization. Now, what you were asking is about how you look after yourself as a leader. And I think the first thing is the organization's culture is really important, because some organizations make all the right noises, but they don't really want you to look after yourself. They want you to be busy. They want you to be present. They want you to be answering emails at 9 or 10 at night and again at 5 in the morning. They want you to never switch off. They want you to be in every detail, the opposite of everything which I say in my TED talk. And if that's the organization's culture, you've got to be really brave to go against it. But if you want to not have a heart attack and not be obese and have good relationships in and outside the workplace, you've got to go against it. You've got to. And often we are being influenced by what we think other people want, because everyone else is doing it. Don't I have to do it? Some of the most effective leaders I know have been quite counterculture in the way they do things, but the test is their impact is good. So as long as you're good, I think you can get away with being different. If you're not very good, you need to fit in. So I guess my take on that, my conclusion on that is, if you're hiring people, you want people who maybe are a bit different, but who deliver results. It's all about impact and effect, not about turning up. But as organizations get bigger, or the bigger the organization, the more likely it is that you want to see conformity that's easy to sign off. Yep, only has half an hour at lunch. Yep, doesn't go for a run, and is always there. When I want them, they're there. The wrong answer is, he's at the gym or she's gone for a run. The right answer is, yep, I'm here. What do you want? I'm stressed. Yes. I haven't eaten. No. I look awful, but I'm here. Of course, that's nonsense. From a cultural point of view, the organization's got to really embrace this. You can't mean it, but not mean it. You've actually got to live it. And some of it comes from the boss. If the boss or the bosses tell everyone that they should be looking after themselves, but they're the ones sending the emails at stupid hours, and they're the ones demanding that everyone's in meeting after meeting after meeting, and they're the ones who are there at 6:30 in the morning themselves. Well, how brave do your staff have to be to look after themselves when your example is horrific self-sacrifice? Probably got several marriages behind you. You've probably got stents in your heart or whatever. It's the change has to happen actually at the top.
Yeah, there's been so much good stuff that I think you've communicated throughout this. I'm really looking forward to people hearing this. I would say this to one of the things you said too, for me. I think I almost would like, for anybody who wants to be a leader, my first thing to them would be, forget everything you think a leader should be, or what you perceive as a good leader, and think about what a good leader has been to you, as opposed to what you think you have to be to somebody else. Because I think sometimes people just start with the wrong perception, and it starts to create this version of themselves. It's not truly who they are. And it goes against what you said, their authenticity. So I think this is the kind of thing, like with your Leadership Connect and your book and just your life experience, I think this is what will be valuable to people, not just at the top, but I think people who are starting out. I think this is really, really good stuff. So I want to end with this. We talked a little bit before we even got on the podcast, but as the world continues to evolve, and the cultures and the virtual workplace, all these things that are technology being as great as it is, I think it also puts us in a situation that we now as leaders have to evolve. So what do you see now moving forward into this next decade or two of some of the traits that you think will define great leaders based on this new technology and the way the world is going?
I would say the ability to understand the technology and to use the technology wisely and not be just because it can, it doesn't mean you should. So the technology will probably continue to allow the flow of huge amounts of information, and for leaders to be more and more present in tactical decisions which are below their pay grade. And I don't mean that in any arrogant way, but if you as a leader are being dragged down into work that there are other leaders who should be leading it, you're in the wrong place. So something's wrong, and it's either your behavior is wrong, or the other leader is wrong, or the culture is wrong. So it's the ability to understand the capability, but not be taken over by it, to not be everywhere all the time, and to remember that the basics won't change. The basics of good leadership are exactly the same now as they were 200 years ago, 500 years ago, probably thousands of years ago, which is that you have an objective, and then you connect with people, which means everything we talked about: kindness and connection, but also inspiration and sometimes some moral courage to confront. But you deal with people. You have to be good with people. It won't be possible to subcontract good leadership to machines. You'll be able to subcontract a lot of management to machines, but I tell you, we do not want machines leading us, because if they're making the decisions on our behalf, we're in big trouble. Can I say one other thing, Charles? Just one other thing.
Yeah.
It's LeaderConnect, our company. Just because you said Leadership Connect, my worry is there might be something called Leadership Connect out there, which will do incredibly well out of this podcast. But mine is leaderconnect.co.uk, and there's links to it in the book as well.
I apologize for that. And I tend to sometimes, when I get excited and we're having a good conversation, I say I did that, but I'll make sure to put it in the notes. And I apologize for misspeaking. I didn't mean to.
Don't worry at all. Don't worry at all. I'm just conscious if people look it up, then I don't want them to miss me.
Yeah, I will make sure that I will have a link in the show notes that they can go to. So guys, as usual, I will misspeak every now and then. I'm glad Neil corrected me. So I will make sure that it'll be easy. You can just click in the show notes and find the right spot. So Neil, thanks for that. Yeah, this has been fascinating to me. And I think one of the things you just said there, I've spoken to people that I know about this, and I think when it comes to machines and AI, I think people start to get nervous, and what they think about right away is it's going to replace me. And, I've been telling people for the last year or maybe year and a half now, it's like, think about it like when Microsoft Word has spell check, things evolve. And if you're into computer programming, SQL, Oracle, it's always going to be dependent on what words and how you program it to make it perform what you need. AI is very similar. It's going to always be based on what you kind of direct it to do. But I do think, in a weird way, when it comes to leadership, what you said there, Neil, is a huge thing for leaders to take away is this. I think AI will allow leaders to be more human and do what leaders are supposed to do if it's used properly. We don't want AI leading us, but there are these things that it could help us be more efficient and really, really have a benefit. So on that note, Neil, so anything else besides anything else people should be looking for you in?
No, I think the book and LeaderConnect, and of course our live courses are, that's what we do from a business perspective. So no, Charles, thank you so much. I love our chats. I really enjoyed meeting you whenever it was, 2 years ago, and it's lovely to see you again. And I hope we go for episode 3 in another couple of years.
Absolutely, because I continue, like I said, to learn from, having guests like you on. I think, I laugh. I tell people, like, this podcast for me, a lot of times it is selfish in this regard. I want to talk to people that I'm going to learn from. And I can honestly say this, Neil. I think you sent me a copy of your book. I think from the first podcast, your TED Talk, there was stuff in the book and the TED Talk that I became a better leader because of it. And the leader I am now, even though I continue to work on it, is probably one of the things I'm most proud of in my life, my professional life. And I really feel strongly about leadership. And as I get older now, I just turned 53. I really want to work even harder on trying to help pass that on and develop the next level of leaders, So that note, please, everybody, check out Neil Jurd. He is a treasure to me, and I think you are going to learn a lot from him. And let's keep on learning and elevating ourselves, everyone. And thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, John.
This has been the Bear Essentials. Thanks for listening. And remember, never hibernate on your goals.